Billionaire's triplets refused to eat for days, until the new nanny did something no one expected. 11 nannies quit in 13 days. Pediatric specialists found nothing wrong, and 3 little girls still wouldn't eat. Then the 12th nanny dropped to the floor, slid 3 steel bowls toward them, and the triplets finally took their first mouthful in days. The phone felt like it was burning in his hand. He pressed it so hard against his ear that his fingers went white at the knuckles. On the other end, the 11th nanny in less than 2 weeks was giving him the same speech he'd heard 10 times before. "Mr. Castellano, I'm sorry, but I can't continue. The girls won't swallow anything. It's been 4 days now, and I'm terrified something worse will happen and I'll be held responsible." He didn't say goodbye. He just ended the call and stood in the center of his sunlit, silent mansion, staring down the hallway toward the nursery. From behind the closed door came a sound that had haunted him for days. Thin, exhausted crying. Not the wail of hunger, something deeper, something broken. Emma, Sophia, and Lily. 3 identical faces. 3 sets of blue eyes that used to light up when he came home. For 4 days, they had refused every meal. Pureed vegetables, pediatric shakes, smoothies blended by a private chef who plated food like museum pieces. The girls pushed it all away, their little hands slick with tears. The best pediatricians in the city had already been through the house. Blood panels, allergy tests, throat exams, nutritional consultations. Every test came back clean. "They're perfectly healthy," the last doctor had said, snapping his leather bag shut. "This is behavioral, not medical." Behavioral. As if his daughters were staging some kind of protest. As if toddlers who couldn't yet speak in full sentences had orchestrated a hunger strike. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like it might crack under the weight of his failure. At the top, he found Margaret, the house manager who had run this estate for 15 years, standing with her arms crossed and her mouth set in a tight line. "Another one quit, didn't she?" Her tone was equal parts accusation and resignation. "Margaret, please. Not now. I told you hiring these young, inexperienced girls wouldn't work. But you don't listen." He walked past her without answering. He didn't have the energy for another argument about credentials and references and the proper way to manage a household. He pushed open the nursery door and felt his chest tighten. The triplets were in their shared crib, wrapped in matching pink blankets, their cheeks sticky with dried tears. When they saw him, they didn't reach for him. They didn't smile. They just stared with that hollow, faraway look that made him feel like he was losing them inch by inch. "Daddy's here, my loves," he whispered, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Everything's going to be okay. I promise." But it was a promise he had no idea how to keep. That night, alone in his office with the city lights glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he made one last call to the agency. The woman on the other end sighed when she heard his voice. "Mr. Castellano, I'll be honest with you. Word has gotten around. The other nannies have been talking, and I'll pay triple," he cut in. "Triple the standard rate for anyone who agrees to stay at least 1 week. And a bonus if they can get the girls to eat." There was a pause. The sound of keys clicking. "We do have one candidate who just registered this morning. She doesn't have a lot of formal references, but I don't care about references. Send her tomorrow. 7 a.m. He hung up and buried his face in his hands. He had built a tech empire worth billions. He had power, influence, access to anything money could buy. And none of it could help his own daughters. For the first time in years, he felt completely powerless. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 a.m. He was already awake. He hadn't slept properly in days. Margaret answered the door with her usual brisk efficiency and returned moments later with a woman carrying nothing but an old canvas tote bag. "Good morning. I'm Claire Donovan." She extended her hand. He studied her for a moment. Early 30s, maybe. She wore a plain button-down shirt and jeans. No tailor blazer, no portfolio of certifications. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and there was something steady in her eyes. Something that didn't flinch. "Mr. Castellano." He shook her hand. It was cool and firm. "Did the agency explain the situation?" "They said your daughters haven't eaten in several days, and that multiple caregivers have tried to help." 11 caregivers, he corrected, his voice edged with bitterness. and they all quit. I won't sugarcoat this. If we can't resolve this soon, the girls will need to be hospitalized for forfeiting. And his throat closed. He couldn't finish the sentence. Claire waited. She didn't rush him. She didn't offer empty reassurances. I don't want it to come to that, he finally said. May I meet them? He led her upstairs. In the nursery, Margaret was already attempting to coax a bottle toward Emma, the eldest by 8 minutes. The toddler turned her head away and whimpered, pushing the bottle with her tiny hands. See, Margaret said, frustration sharpening her voice. It's always like this. They won't accept anything. Claire stepped into the room slowly and knelt beside the crib. She didn't reach for the girls. She didn't try to pick them up or coo at them. She just stayed there, watching. Sophia stopped crying and tilted her head, curious. Lily, the smallest, crawled to the crib rail and stared at the stranger with wide, cautious eyes. Emma kept her gaze fixed on a framed photograph on the wall. Her father alone at some corporate event, his smile polished and distant. They're beautiful, Claire murmured. How old? 15 months, he said. They were just starting to walk. Before this, Claire's eyes moved around the room. She noticed the high chairs in the corner, pristine and unused. The shelf of untouched toys. The way the girls' eyes darted toward the door every time they heard footsteps in the hall. May I stay alone with them for an hour? Alone? Margaret's voice shot up. Absolutely not. I won't leave a complete stranger alone with these children. What if something happens? Margaret. His voice was tired but firm. Right now, I need to try anything. If Miss Donovan thinks she can help, we let her try. The house manager's mouth opened, then closed. She left the room with an indignant huff, making sure the door clicked loudly behind her. Thank you, Claire said quietly. I know it's hard to trust someone you just met. Hard. He gave a hollow laugh. Miss Donovan, at this point, I trust anyone who gave me even a shred of hope. 1 hour. If there's no progress, we move to the hospital. He stepped into the hallway and closed the door gently. Margaret was waiting, arms crossed. This is reckless, Mr. Castellano. I'll be right here, he said, leaning against the wall. Any sound that worries me, I go in. Inside, Claire moved carefully. No sudden gestures. No forced smiles. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, and began to hum. It wasn't a lullaby from an app or a parenting book. It was something old and looping with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Sophia was the first to react. She stopped fussing and crawled closer to the crib rail. Emma released the blanket she'd been clutching. Lily watched, transfixed. Claire kept humming as she stood and began to explore the room. She opened the closet, checked the drawers, looked under the crib, and there, pushed into the far corner beneath the bed frame, she found them. 3 heavy steel mixing bowls. They were clean but worn, with faint scratches along the inside. Claire pulled them out and turned them over in her hands, a sad, knowing smile crossing her face. She placed the bowls on the hardwood floor in a triangle. Then she opened the door. He nearly stumbled forward. He'd been leaning close, trying to hear. I need you to bring me some food, Claire said, her voice calm but certain. Nothing fancy. Warm rice, shredded chicken, mashed potato. Simple, soft. But the girls refuse. Please trust me. He looked past her into the room. The triplets were calmer than they'd been in days. Sophia was standing, holding the crib rail. Lily was watching Claire like she was trying to remember something. Margaret, he called down the hall. Prepare what she asked for. Now. The house manager muttered something about unconventional methods, but returned 15 minutes later with a tray. Claire took it and closed the door again, leaving him outside, heart pounding. Inside, Claire lifted the girls from the crib one by one and set them on the floor around the bowls. Not on the high chairs, not at the table, on the floor. She spooned small portions into each bowl. Rice, chicken, potato, all mixed into something they could eat with their hands. Then she stepped back and sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't coax, didn't beg. She just waited. For a long, breathless minute, nothing happened. Then Emma crawled forward. She touched the edge of the bowl, looked at Claire, looked at her sisters, and she took a bite. Sophia moved next. Then Lily. Within moments, all 3 were eating. Not much, just a few spoonfuls. But they were eating. Outside, he heard the crying stop. His pulse spiked. He was about to burst in when the door opened. Claire stood there, her expression calm. They ate. He pushed past her and dropped to his knees. The bowls were still on the floor, bits of food smeared around the edges. The girls sat in a loose circle, their hands messy, their faces more alive than they'd been in days. He pulled Emma into his arms and held her tight, his breath shaking. Ow! His voice cracked. How did you do it? Claire knelt beside him and rested a hand on Sophia's head. They don't have a medical problem, Mr. Castellano. They have an emotional one. And that kind of problem isn't solved with doctors or nutritionists. It's solved with understanding. But why the floor? Why the bowls? It doesn't make sense. Claire met his eyes. It makes sense to them. And right now, that's what matters. But I'll need time to fully understand what's happening here. And I'll need your cooperation. He looked at his daughters. Lily had crawled into his lap. Sophia was leaning against his shoulder. Emma's eyes were finally closed in something like peace. You're hired, he said, for as long as it takes. Do whatever you need to do. Just please help my daughters. Claire nodded, but there was something in her expression, a flicker of concern, as if she already sensed that what lay ahead would be far more complicated than getting 3 toddlers to eat. As if she knew this house held secrets that still needed to come to light. And she was right. Listen, I know you're invested in this story. I can feel it. You want to know if those girls will be okay, if Claire can save this family, if healing is even possible. But here's the thing. Channels like ours live or die by subscribers and engagement. YouTube's algorithm doesn't care how good our stories are if people don't subscribe. So if you've listened this far, if you felt your heart clench when those babies finally ate, do us one small favor. Subscribe and drop a quick comment with the time and your location. 11 p.m., Chicago, or morning coffee, Sydney, whatever. It takes 3 seconds, but tells YouTube this content matters. And honestly, we need to know someone's actually out there listening. Now, back to the story. Over the next 3 days, Claire established a quiet, unshakable routine. 3 times a day, she placed the girls on the floor around the steel bowls. 3 times a day they ate. Not large amounts, but enough to begin rebuilding their strength. He watched it all with a mixture of relief and confusion. I still don't understand, he said on the 3rd morning, watching Claire prepare breakfast. Why the floor? Why those bowls? Claire looked at him carefully, weighing her words. Mr. Castellano, may I ask you a few questions about the girls' routine? Of course. Who used to feed them? Before they stopped eating? He blinked, caught off guard. The nannies, of course. We had one who stayed for 3 months. She was excellent. The girls ate well, slept well. But she had to leave last month for a family emergency. And before that, other nannies. We've always had professionals. I work long hours, so I need someone with them full-time. Claire's gaze didn't waver. And their mother? The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush him. He looked away. Their mother hasn't been part of our lives for 6 months. Claire waited. She had learned long ago that silence was a better question than words. People filled silence with truth when they couldn't bear the weight of it anymore. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she would come to recognize over the following weeks, and exhaled slowly. Her name is Victoria, he said finally, his voice flat. We met at a tech conference in San Francisco 7 years ago. She was brilliant, venture capital, sharp instincts, sharper wit. We got married fast. Too fast, probably, but it felt right. He paused, staring at the steel bowls still sitting in a triangle on the nursery floor. When we found out she was pregnant with triplets, we were terrified. Excited, but terrified. The pregnancy was hard. Bed rest for months. Emergency C-section at 34 weeks. The girls spent 3 weeks in the NICU. Claire listened, her hands folded in her lap. Victoria was amazing at first. She did everything. Feedings, diaper changes, midnight wake-ups. She insisted on doing it herself, even when I hired help. She said she wanted to be present for every moment. His jaw tightened. But around their first birthday, something shifted. She started talking about how she'd put her career on hold, how she'd lost herself, how she felt like she was disappearing into motherhood. I tried to support her. I really did. I hired more staff so she could have time for herself. I encouraged her to take meetings, to travel if she needed to. He looked at Claire, and for the first time, she saw the raw guilt in his eyes. 6 months ago, she told me she couldn't do it anymore. She said she loved the girls, but she couldn't be the mother they needed. She took a position with a firm in London. She sends money. She video calls once a week, but the girls don't really respond anymore. They just stare at the screen like they're looking at a stranger. Claire absorbed this carefully. And when did the feeding issues start? About 3 weeks ago. Right after the last nanny, the good one, left. I thought it was just an adjustment period. But then it got worse. And worse. Mr. Castellano, Claire said gently, may I see the rest of the house? He frowned. The house? What? Because children don't just live in nurseries. They live in the whole environment. And sometimes the answers aren't in the room where the problem shows up. He hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Whatever you need. Claire moved through the mansion like an investigator at a crime scene. She opened closets, checked shelves, ran her fingers along picture frames, or rather, the empty spaces where picture frames used to be. In the living room, there were photos of him at corporate events, shaking hands with tech executives, accepting awards. But none of the girls. None of Victoria. The walls were clean, modern, impersonal. In the hallway leading to the master bedroom, she found a storage closet. Inside, stacked neatly in labeled boxes, were the missing pieces, framed photos of Victoria holding the girls as newborns. A candid shot of her sitting cross-legged on a deck, 3 metal mixing bowls in front of her, the triplets smearing food everywhere while she laughed. Another of her at bath time, soaked and grinning, a baby on each hip and one clinging to her leg. Claire pulled out the deck photo and studied it closely. The bowls, the floor, the relaxed, joyful chaos. She understood. Mr. Castellano, she called. He appeared in the hallway, Margaret trailing behind him with a suspicious expression. Claire held up the photo. This is why they eat from the bowls on the floor. He stared at the image, his face going pale. They're not being difficult, Claire continued. They're trying to find their way back to her, to the rituals that meant safety and love. You removed all the photos, all the reminders, thinking it would help them, and you move on. But children don't process loss the way adults do. They don't understand explanations. They understand patterns, routines, sensory memories. Margaret scoffed. That's absurd. They're barely over a year old. They can't possibly remember. They remember with their bodies, Claire said firmly. The weight of the bowl, the coolness of the metal, the feeling of sitting on the floor close together. Those sense memories are tied to their mother. When you took those things away and replaced them with high chairs and silver spoons and formal meal times, you erased the map they used to navigate the world. He sank onto the hallway bench, the photo trembling in his hands. I thought I was helping them, he whispered. I thought if we just moved forward, it would hurt less. You were trying to protect them, Claire said. But grief doesn't work that way, especially not for children. She knelt in front of him. If you want them to eat, if you want them to feel safe again, we need to rebuild the map. Not by bringing their mother back, because we can't, but by restoring the patterns and rhythms that made them feel loved. Ow! His voice was hoarse. We start small. We put a few photos back on the walls. We use the bowls. We sit on the floor. We create new rituals that echo the old ones so they can build a bridge between what was and what is. Margaret crossed her arms. This is highly unorthodox. So is starving, Claire replied coolly. He looked up at her, and in that moment, she saw a man who had spent 6 months trying to control his way through grief and failing. Do it, he said. Whatever you think will help. I don't care if it's unorthodox. I don't care if it looks strange. I just want my daughters to be okay. That evening, Claire hung 3 photos in the hallway. One near the nursery door, one at the top of the stairs, and one in the living room. Not shrine-like, not overwhelming, just present. She didn't announce it. She simply let the house remember itself. At dinner, she placed the girls on the floor again with the steel bowls. This time, she added something new. She hummed while she prepared the food. The same looping melody from the first morning, low and steady, with the rhythm of a heartbeat. Emma looked up. Sophia tilted her head. Lily crawled closer. They ate. Not just a few bites this time. They ate until the bowls were nearly empty. He stood in the doorway, Watching, his hands pressed to his mouth. When the girls were finished, Claire wiped their hands and faces with a warm cloth, still humming. She lifted them one by one and carried them to the bathroom for their bath. "May I help?" he asked quietly. Claire smiled. "Of course." He knelt beside the tub while she filled it with warm water. She handed him a soft washcloth, and he gently cleaned Lily's face while Sophia splashed and Emma grabbed at floating toys. "Talk to them," Claire said. "Tell them about your day. It doesn't matter if they understand the words. They need to hear your voice as part of the routine." He hesitated, then began to speak. Awkwardly at first, then with more ease. "Daddy had a lot of meetings today," he said, running the cloth over Lily's chubby arms. "Very boring meetings. But I kept thinking about you three. I kept thinking about how brave you are." Emma looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in days. His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry I didn't understand sooner. I'm so sorry." Claire rested a hand on his shoulder. "You're understanding now. That's what matters." Later that night, after the girls were asleep, he found Claire in the kitchen, washing the steel bowls by hand. "You don't have to do that," he said. "The staff." "I know," she said, "but I want to. It's part of the ritual." He leaned against the counter, watching her. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know?" "About the bowls, the floor, the photos. How did you figure out so fast when 11 other professionals couldn't?" Claire dried her hands slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Because I've lived it," she said quietly. "Not the same story, but the same kind of loss. The same kind of grief that doesn't fit into neat categories." He waited. "I had a daughter," she continued, her voice steady but soft. "She was 4. There was an accident, a car accident. I was driving. His breath caught. It wasn't my fault. Legally, I mean. A drunk driver ran a red light. But that doesn't change the fact that she's gone. And for a long time, I couldn't figure out how to keep living in a world that didn't have her in it." She set the bowls on the drying rack, each one placed with care. "I learned that grief isn't something you solve. It's something you learn to carry. And children, they carry it differently than we do. They need anchors, rituals, patterns that tell them the world still makes sense, even when it doesn't." He didn't know what to say, so he just stood there, holding the weight of her story alongside his own. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "Me too," she said. "But that's why I do this work. Because I understand what it's like when the map gets erased. And I know how to help draw a new one." The next morning, Margaret was waiting for Claire at the bottom of the stairs, her expression tight. "A word, Miss Donovan." Claire followed her into the study and closed the door. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing," Margaret said, her voice low and sharp, "but this household has run smoothly for 15 years under my management. I will not have some outsider come in and upend everything we've built." "I'm not trying to upend anything," Claire said calmly. "I'm trying to help 3 little girls who are grieving." "Grieving," Margaret repeated with a bitter laugh. "They're babies. They don't even understand what's happening. They understand more than you think." Margaret stepped closer, her eyes hard. "Mr. Castellano is vulnerable right now. He's desperate, and desperate people make poor decisions. I've seen caregivers like you before, young, idealistic, thinking you can swoop in and fix everything. But you don't know this family. You don't know what's best for them." Claire met her gaze without flinching. "You're right. I don't know this family yet, but I know grief. And I know that control isn't the same thing as care." Margaret's jaw tightened. "We'll see how long you last." She turned and left, the door clicking shut behind her. Claire stood alone in the study, her heart beating fast. She had expected resistance. There was always resistance when you disrupted a system, even a broken one. But she hadn't expected it to feel this hostile. She took a deep breath and returned to the nursery, where the triplets were waking up. Emma reached for her immediately, and Claire lifted her into her arms, feeling the small, warm weight settle against her chest. "It's okay," she murmured, more to herself than to the child. "We'll figure this out, one bowl at a time." By the end of the first week, the girls were eating 3 meals a day. Their color was returning. Their energy was coming back. Sophia took her first wobbly steps across the nursery floor, and Lily laughed, a real bright belly laugh, when Claire played peekaboo with a blanket. He documented everything. Photos of meals, notes on portion sizes, pediatrician visits with updated weight charts. His lawyer had advised him to keep meticulous records, though he wasn't sure why. Not yet. On the seventh night, Claire was putting the girls to bed when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should know what you're getting into. Ask him about the custody agreement. She stared at the message, her stomach tightening. She deleted it, but the unease lingered. Downstairs, Margaret stood in the hallway outside the study, her own phone in her hand, a small, satisfied smile on her lips. The first move had been made. The fragile stability Claire has built is about to be tested. As she digs deeper into the house's secrets and the family's history, she'll discover that the triplets' refusal to eat was only the first symptom of a much larger fracture, and that not everyone in the house wanted her to succeed. Claire didn't sleep well that night. The anonymous text kept cycling through her mind, each word a small barb. Ask him about the custody agreement. She rose before dawn and moved through the quiet mansion with purpose. If someone was watching, if someone wanted her to stumble, then she needed to understand the terrain completely. She started in the storage closet where she'd found the first photos. Behind the labeled boxes, pushed to the very back of the top shelf, she discovered a leather-bound album thick with dust. She pulled it down carefully and carried it to the window, where early light was just beginning to filter through. The first page showed Victoria in a hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, 3 tiny bundles arranged on her chest. The next few pages documented the NICU days, tubes and monitors, and 2 parents who looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Then the album shifted. The girls at 6 months, sitting in a sunny kitchen. Victoria on a deck, cross-legged on the weathered boards, 3 metal mixing bowls arranged in front of her. The babies, chubby and bright-eyed, had food smeared across their faces, their hands the floor. Victoria was laughing, her hair falling out of a messy bun, her shirt stained with pureed sweet potato. Claire traced the image with her finger. There it was, the origin point, the map the girls had been searching for. She photographed several pages with her phone, then returned the album to its hiding place. Evidence, context, the kind of foundation that would matter if things got complicated. And her instincts told her things were about to get very complicated. Over the next 3 days, Claire worked methodically. She added 2 more photos to the hallway, carefully chosen images that showed Victoria with the girls, but also included him. So the narrative wasn't about absence, but about continuity. She began humming the same looping melody at every transition. Waking, meals, bath time, sleep. Low and steady, with the rhythm of a heartbeat. The triplets responded. Sophia started humming it back, off-key and sweet. Emma would grow still and focused when she heard it, as if the sound was a tether pulling her back to safety. Lily began to anticipate bath time, crawling toward the bathroom door when Claire started the song. Claire logged everything. Portion sizes, sleep patterns, mood shifts. She photographed the girls eating, playing, resting. Not for social media, the accounts had been scrubbed months ago, but for the record she sensed they would need. He noticed. "You're very thorough," he said one morning, watching her update a spiral notebook with neat, precise handwriting. "Documentation protects everyone," Claire replied. "The girls, you mean. Protects us from what?" She looked up, her gaze steady. "From people who don't understand what healing looks like." He had built his empire on data. Metrics. Dashboards that turned chaos into clean lines and predictable outcomes. When Victoria left, he had applied the same logic to grief. Remove the variables, control the environment, and the pain would resolve itself. He had boxed her photos, deleted the shared calendar, rearranged the furniture so the sight lines didn't trigger memories. He had believed, genuinely believed, that tidiness could cauterize emotional wounds the way you'd sterilize a surgical site. But watching Claire work, watching his daughters come back to life one bowl at a time, he began to understand how profoundly he had failed them. "I didn't see it," he told Claire one evening after the girls were asleep. They were in the kitchen. She was hand-washing the bowls again, and he was drying them, a small ritual they'd fallen into. "I didn't see that they were grieving. I thought I was protecting them." "You were doing what you knew how to do," Claire said gently. "You can't blame yourself for not having a map you were never given. But you had the map. She shook her head. I had a different map, one I wish I'd never needed. But that's what grief does. It teaches you to read the signs. He set down the towel and looked at her. How long did it take? After your daughter. How long before you could breathe again? Claire was quiet for a long moment. I'm still learning, she said finally. But I can tell you this. It gets easier when you stop trying to control it. When you let it move through you instead of trying to box it up. He nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of that truth. Margaret watched these late-night kitchen conversations from the hallway, her jaw tight with disapproval. The household routines she had perfected over 15 years were unraveling. Meals on the floor, photos reappearing on walls she'd personally cleared. The master of the house taking orders from a woman with no credentials and a canvas tote bag. It was unacceptable. She began small, adjusting meal times by 15 minutes, so Claire's rhythm was disrupted. Misplacing one of the steel bowls, so only 2 were available. Mentioning, casually to the housekeeping staff, that eating off the floor was unsanitary, that the health department would have concerns, that this was not how a proper household operated. I'm just worried about the girls, she told the chef one morning, her voice dripping with false concern. Miss Donovan seems very unconventional, and Mr. Castellano is too vulnerable right now to see the risks. The chef, who had worked in the house for 8 years, said nothing. But Margaret saw the seed of doubt take root. The call came on a Tuesday morning. He was in his office when his assistant transferred it through. Mr. Castellano, this is Linda Reyes from Child Protective Services. I'm calling to schedule a routine home visit. We received a report expressing concern about the welfare of your daughters. His blood went cold. A report? From whom? I'm not at liberty to say, but I want to assure you this is standard procedure. We just need to verify that the children are safe and receiving appropriate care. He gripped the phone. My daughters are perfectly safe. They're thriving. I'm sure they are. This is just a formality. Would Thursday at 10 a.m. work for you? He agreed because he had no choice. The moment he hung up, he called his lawyer. Document everything, the lawyer said immediately. Meals, medical visits, developmental milestones. If someone is building a case, you need a counter-narrative ready. Well, he told Claire. She didn't flinch. Then we document, she said simply. We have nothing to hide. That evening, he had a board meeting scheduled. A critical vote on a merger that would expand his company into 3 new markets. He was halfway out the door, briefcase in hand, when he heard Claire's voice from the kitchen. Dinner's ready, girls. Come sit with me. He stopped, turned, walked back. Claire looked up, surprised, as he set his briefcase down and loosened his tie. May I join you? She smiled. Of course. He sat on the floor, awkward in his suit pants and dress shirt, his long legs folded uncomfortably. Claire placed a bowl in front of him. Plain rice, shredded chicken, steamed carrots. The same meal the girls were eating. Emma crawled over immediately and leaned against his knee, her small hand resting on his thigh. Sophia watched him carefully, then offered him a piece of carrot from her own bowl. Lily hummed Claire's melody, off-key and perfect. He felt something crack open in his chest. Thank you, he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to Claire or his daughters or the universe that had somehow sent him both. Claire watched from her spot on the floor, measuring the moment. Presence over perfection. Connection over control. This was the work that mattered. The photos appeared 2 days later. Grainy. Time-stamped. Pulled from security footage that had been archived and supposedly encrypted. The first image showed Claire and him in the garden at dusk, sitting on a stone bench, their heads close together in conversation. The second was from the living room. Claire on the sofa, with Lily asleep on her shoulder, him sitting beside her, their hands nearly touching as they reached for the same blanket. The third was from the kitchen, a single frame of their hands meeting as they passed a bowl, the angle making it look intimate, deliberate. The images arrived in an email to Victoria's lawyer in London. No message, no explanation, just the photos and a subject line. Thought you should see this. Within an hour, Victoria was on a plane. Within 2 hours, the lawyer had filed a motion for emergency custody review. And in the mansion, Margaret stood in her private quarters, staring at her phone, wondering if she had just saved the children or destroyed them. Victoria arrived on a Thursday afternoon, stepping out of a black car with luggage that suggested she planned to stay. She was thinner than in the photos, sharp where she'd been soft, her hair cut into a severe bob that framed a face etched with sleepless nights and transatlantic guilt. He met her at the door, his body a wall between her and the interior of the house. "You can't just show up like this," he said, his voice low and tight. "I got a call from my attorney," Victoria replied, her accent carrying a faint British inflection now, as if 6 months abroad had begun to reshape even her voice. "He said there were concerns. About the girls. About inappropriate boundaries." "That's absurd." "Then let me see them." Her eyes were red-rimmed, but steady. "Please, I need to see that they're okay." He wanted to say no, wanted to slam the door on 6 months of silence and weekly video calls where his daughters stared at the screen like it was showing a stranger. But he stepped aside because legally, morally, he had no choice. Victoria walked into the house she'd once called home, and Claire watched from the top of the stairs, the triplets playing quietly in the nursery behind her. The reunion was painful in its awkwardness. Victoria knelt on the nursery floor, her arms open, her voice breaking as she said their names. "Emma, Sophia, Lily, it's Mama. I'm here." The girls stopped playing. Emma looked at her father, confused. Sophia crawled behind Claire's legs. Lily stared at Victoria with wide, uncertain eyes. "It's okay," Claire said gently, crouching beside the triplets. "You remember Mama. She's been away, but she's here now." Victoria's face crumpled. "They don't know me. They know you," Claire said. "But memory is complicated for children. Give them time." Victoria wiped her eyes and tried again, this time softer. She began to sing, a lullaby Claire didn't recognize, off-key and wavering, but earnest. On the second verse, Emma tilted her head. By the third, Sophia had inched forward. Lily crawled into Victoria's lap, and Victoria clutched her like a lifeline, tears streaming silently down her face. From the doorway, he watched with his arms crossed, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. Anger and relief warred in his chest. Anger that she'd left, relief that the girls still recognized some part of her. And in the corner, Margaret observed with a small, satisfied smile. Chaos had arrived. The nanny's carefully constructed order was fracturing. That night, after the girls were asleep, the 3 adults sat in the living room like diplomats negotiating a fragile ceasefire. "You left," he said, his voice flat. "You walked away from them. From us. And now you show up because someone sent your lawyer some photos." "I didn't walk away," Victoria shot back. "I was drowning. You were never here, always at the office, always on calls. I was alone with 3 babies who cried in shifts, who needed everything, and I had nothing left to give. I broke. So you ran to London. I ran to survive." Her voice cracked, and I've regretted it every single day. But I couldn't be the mother they needed when I was disappearing. And now, his tone was sharp. "Now you're ready? After 6 months? I'm trying to be." Claire, who had been silent, spoke quietly. "This isn't about who is right or wrong. It's about what the girls need now." They both turned to her. "They need consistency," Claire continued. "They need to know that both of you are present, even if you're not together. Right now, they're rebuilding their sense of safety through rituals, the bowls, the songs, the routines. If you want to be part of their lives, Victoria, you need to learn those rituals and carry them into your space too." Victoria frowned. "My space. Shared custody is coming," Claire said simply, "whether through agreement or court order. The question is whether you'll fight each other or build a bridge for them." He looked at Claire, something like awe flickering across his face. Victoria stared at her hands. "What rituals?" Victoria asked finally. The photos reached Victoria's attorney the next morning, forwarded with a terse note, evidence of inappropriate relationship between father and hired caregiver, concerns about children's welfare and stability. The attorney called immediately. "Victoria, we need to talk about filing for emergency custody review. These images suggest." "They suggest 2 people caring for my children," Victoria interrupted, staring at the grainy stills on her laptop screen. "That's all. A judge might see it differently. Blurred boundaries. A nanny who's overstepped her role. Victoria closed her eyes. She'd spent 6 months in London trying to outrun her guilt, and now someone was handing her a weapon to wield against the man who'd stayed, against the woman who'd succeeded where she had failed. File the motion, she said quietly, but not for emergency custody, for a formal evaluation. I need to know they're safe, but I'm not going to war unless I have to. The social worker arrived on Monday. Linda Reyes was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a neutral expression that gave nothing away. She carried a tablet and a leather portfolio, and she moved through the house with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen everything. "Mr. Castellano, can you walk me through a typical day?" He did, his voice steady despite the anxiety coiling in his gut. "Wake up at 7. Breakfast on the floor with the steel bowls. Playtime. Snack. Nap. Lunch. Outdoor time in the garden. Bath. Dinner. Bedtime routine with the same lullaby every night." "And Miss Donovan's role?" "She's the primary caregiver," he said, "but I'm present for meals and bedtime. I've restructured my work schedule to be here." Linda made notes. "And the children's mother?" "She's here now. Visiting. We're discussing a co-parenting arrangement." Linda turned to Claire. "Miss Donovan, can you describe your approach to care?" Claire answered with the same calm precision she brought to everything. The girls experienced a significant disruption when their mother left. They stopped eating because they'd lost the sensory anchors that made them feel safe. I identified those anchors, the bowls, the floor, the physical closeness, and rebuilt the routines around them. It's not unconventional. It's trauma-informed care. And your relationship with Mr. Castellano? Professional, collaborative, focused entirely on the children's well-being. Linda's gaze was steady. There have been concerns raised about boundaries. Before Claire could respond, Margaret appeared in the doorway with a tray of tea, her timing impeccable. "If I may," Margaret said, her voice deferential but pointed. "I've worked in this household for 15 years. I've seen many caregivers come and go. Miss Donovan is very dedicated, perhaps too dedicated. The girls have become quite attached to her. I worry what will happen when she eventually leaves." Linda made another note. Claire's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened slightly in her lap. The evaluation continued through lunch. Linda watched the girls eat from their bowls on the kitchen floor, Claire and him sitting cross-legged on either side of the triangle. Emma fed herself with her fingers. Sophia hummed the lullaby. Lily offered Claire a piece of banana, then offered one to her father. "They seem very comfortable," Linda observed. "They are," he said. "For the first time in weeks, they are." Linda closed her tablet. "I'll submit my report by the end of the week. In the meantime, I'd recommend that both parents continue to be present and that any custody arrangements prioritize stability and consistency." She left, and the house exhaled. That night, after Victoria had returned to her hotel and the girls were asleep, Claire found him in the kitchen, staring at the steel bowls lined up on the counter. "I'm going to lose them," he said, his voice hollow. "Victoria's attorney is going to argue that I'm unfit, that I let a stranger get too close, that I didn't protect them from—" "Stop." Claire's voice was firm. She moved to stand beside him. "You didn't let a stranger in. You let someone help. There's a difference. The photos are being weaponized by someone who wants to control the narrative. But the truth is simple. You showed up. You sat on the floor. You learned the song. You chose presence over pride. That's what the judge will see." He turned to her, his eyes raw. "What if it's not enough?" Claire was quiet for a moment, and in that silence, he saw the shadow of her own loss flicker across her face. The daughter she couldn't save, the grief she carried like a second skin. "Presence is the recipe," she said softly. "Not perfection, not control, just showing up every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." He nodded, not trusting his voice. The custody petition arrived by courier the next morning. Victoria's attorney had filed for shared custody with a request for a full hearing to determine the children's best interests. Attached were the photos, a timeline of the nanny's employment, and a list of questions about household stability and appropriate boundaries. His lawyer called within the hour. "They're going to scrutinize everything. The nanny's background, your relationship with her, the speed of the girl's attachment. If there's any fracture in your story, they'll exploit it. He looked across the kitchen to where Claire was preparing the girls' breakfast, humming the lullaby that had become the house's heartbeat. There's no fracture, he said. We're telling the truth. Then we document everything, the lawyer replied, and we prepare for a fight. The 2 weeks before the hearing moved with the mechanical precision of a countdown. Claire compiled binders, meal logs with portion sizes and times, sleep charts, developmental milestone checklists, photographs of the girls eating, playing, thriving. The pediatrician submitted a letter on official letterhead, significant improvement in nutritional intake and overall effect. Children appear secure and appropriately attached. He restructured his entire professional life. Board meetings moved to video calls during nap time. Site visits rescheduled. He was home every morning for breakfast, every evening for bath and bedtime. His executive team grumbled. His lawyer approved. Victoria visited 3 times a week, learning the routines with the careful attention of a student cramming for an exam. Claire taught her the lullaby, showed her how to arrange the bowls, explained why the girls needed to see her sitting on the floor at their level. It's not about the bowls themselves, Claire said. It's about what the bowls represent. Safety, consistency, love that doesn't disappear. Victoria's eyes filled, but she nodded and practiced the song until she could hum it without breaking. The courtroom was smaller than he'd expected. Family court didn't have the drama of television. No jury box, no gallery. Just a judge's bench, 2 tables, and a handful of people who would decide his daughter's future. Judge Patricia Okonkwo was in her early 60s, with silver locks pulled back and reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed the files in silence before looking up. This is a custody determination hearing, not a trial. I'm here to understand what arrangement serves the best interests of 3 15-month-old children. Let's proceed. Victoria's attorney went first. He was polished and sympathetic, painting a picture of a mother who'd struggled with postpartum depression, who'd made the painful choice to seek help rather than harm her children through her presence, who had now stabilized and was ready to re-enter their lives. Ms. Castellano has secured a position with a venture capital firm here in New York, the attorney said, sliding documents across to the judge. Flexible hours, remote work options. She's leased a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn with a park 2 blocks away. She's completed a parenting course focused on reintegration after separation. Victoria took the stand, her voice quiet but steady. I'm not here to make excuses, she said. I left because I was breaking, and I was terrified of what I might become if I stayed. But I've spent every day since then working to be the mother they deserve. I know I can't erase the time I was gone, but I want to build a future where they know I chose to come back. Then the attorney introduced the photos. Grainy, intimate, misleading. Your Honor, we're not suggesting anything inappropriate occurred, but we do question whether the boundaries in Mr. Castellano's household are appropriate for young children. The nanny appears to have taken on a role that blurs professional and personal lines. We're concerned about the children's ability to form secure attachments when the caregiving structure is unclear. Judge Okonkwo studied the images without expression, then set them aside. His attorney countered with the documentation, the binders, the pediatric letter, the social worker's report, which noted, home environment is stable, clean, and child-centered. Children demonstrate secure attachment to both father and primary caregiver. No concerns observed. Mr. Castellano has made significant changes to prioritize his daughters, his attorney said. He's reduced his work hours, restructured his schedule, and hired a qualified caregiver who identified and addressed a serious feeding issue that 11 other professionals could not resolve. The children are thriving. He took the stand, his hands folded to keep them from shaking. I failed my daughters when their mother left, he said. I thought I could manage grief the way I manage a company, control the variables, eliminate the chaos. But children don't work that way. Claire, Miss Donovan, taught me that. She taught me to sit on the floor, to be present instead of perfect. My daughters are eating, sleeping, laughing again because someone finally understood what they needed. In your relationship with Miss Donovan? The judge asked. Professional, collaborative, focused entirely on my daughter's well-being. The photos suggest a level of intimacy. The photos suggest two people working late to care for three toddlers. He interrupted, his voice firm. We talk in the garden because that's where we can speak privately after the girls are asleep. We sit together because one of my daughters won't sleep unless someone is holding her. Our hands touch because we're passing bowls and bottles and toys 100 times a day. There's nothing inappropriate. There's just care. Judge Okonkwo made a note. Claire was called last. She walked to the stand in a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back, her expression calm. Miss Donovan, you have an unusual approach to childcare, the judge said. Can you explain your methodology? Children who experience trauma or significant disruption often lose their sense of safety, Claire said. They can't articulate what's wrong because they don't have the language yet. But their bodies remember. The triplets stopped eating because the rituals that had made them feel secure, eating from metal bowls on the floor with their mother, had been removed. I didn't invent a new method. I identified what they were searching for and restored it. And your relationship with Mr. Castellano? I work for him, but my loyalty is to the children. Everything I do is in service of their stability and well-being. The photos are moments taken out of context, Claire said, her voice steady. I don't apologize for sitting beside a grieving father while his daughter sleeps. I don't apologize for late-night conversations about how to help three toddlers heal. If that's inappropriate, then I fundamentally misunderstand what care requires. Victoria's attorney stood. Miss Donovan, isn't it true that you lost a child of your own? The courtroom went silent. Claire's hands tightened briefly in her lap, then relaxed. Yes, and isn't it possible that your attachment to these children is driven by your own unresolved grief? Claire met his eyes. My grief is resolve enough to do this work with clarity. I know the difference between projection and care. These children are not replacements for my daughter. They are three individuals who needed someone to see them clearly. And I did. Judge Okonkwo leaned forward. Thank you, Miss Donovan. You may step down. The hearing ended with no decision. Judge Okonkwo would review the materials and issue a ruling within 1 week. They left the courthouse in silence. Victoria returned to her hotel. He and Claire drove home, the weight of uncertainty pressing down like a physical thing. That evening, Margaret was waiting in the foyer. Mr. Castellano, may I speak with you privately? He looked at Claire, who nodded and went upstairs to check on the girls. In the study, he closed the door and turned to face the woman who had run his household for 15 years. It was you, he said quietly. The photos. The call to CPS. You leaked everything. Margaret didn't deny it. I did what I thought was necessary to protect this family. From what? From someone who helped my daughters eat again. From chaos, Margaret said, her voice rising. From a stranger who waltzed in and dismantled everything we'd built. You were vulnerable, and she took advantage. She saved them. His voice was hard, and you tried to destroy her for it. I was protecting you. No, you were protecting your control. He took a breath. Margaret, you're fired. Effective immediately. I'll provide severance and a reference for your years of service. But you're done here. Her face went pale, then red. You're making a mistake. That woman has you under her spell, and when she leaves, and she will leave, you'll realize what you've lost. I've already lost too much, he said. I won't lose my daughters because you couldn't let go. Margaret left without another word, her footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. 2 days later, Victoria called Claire. Can you come to my apartment? I want to try the routine. With the girls. Claire arrived with the triplets and a canvas bag containing 3 steel bowls. Victoria's apartment was bright and spare, still half unpacked. Show me, Victoria said. Claire arranged the bowls on the hardwood floor in a triangle. She hummed the lullaby while spooning rice and chicken into each bowl. The girls crawled forward, hesitant at first, then settled into the familiar pattern. Victoria sat cross-legged across from Claire, watching. It's not about the food, Claire said softly. It's about the rhythm, the predictability. If you do this the same way every time, same bowls, same song, same position on the floor, they'll eat for you too. Victoria tried. Her voice wavered on the melody, but she kept going. Emma looked up, tilted her head, and took a bite. Sophia followed. Lily crawled into Victoria's lap and ate from there. Victoria's tears fell silently into her daughter's hair. "Thank you," she whispered. The night before the judge's decision, Claire and he stood in the foyer after a quiet dinner. The girls were asleep. The house was still. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "I want you to know." "Don't," Claire said gently. "Not yet. Not until we know they're safe. But if the judge rules for shared custody, if Victoria takes them half the time, I need you to know that what you've done here is for them," Claire finished. "Not for you. Not for me. For them." He nodded. The words he wanted to say caught in his throat. She reached out and squeezed his hand once, briefly, then let go. "Presence is the recipe," she said. "Tomorrow, we'll keep showing up." Judge Okonkwo delivered her ruling on a gray Wednesday morning, her voice measured and clear. Shared physical custody, alternating weekly. Joint legal custody with required consultation on all medical, educational, and developmental decisions. Both parents will maintain consistent routines, and Miss Donovan will remain as primary caregiver during Mr. Castellano's custodial periods, should both parties agree. She removed her glasses and looked at both parents. "I want to be clear, this family has been fractured, and these children have paid the price. What I've seen in this courtroom is two parents who love their daughters but lost their way. I've also seen a caregiver who understood what no one else could. Moving forward, I expect maturity first and optics last. These girls don't need perfection. They need presence." She signed the order. Relief and grief hit him simultaneously. Relief that he wouldn't lose them, grief that he would have to let them go, even temporarily. Across the aisle, Victoria pressed her hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Outside the courthouse, they stood awkwardly on the steps. "First exchange is Sunday," Victoria said, "at the park near my apartment. 2 p.m. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Sunday arrived too quickly. He packed the girls' bags with Claire's help. Clothes, diapers, the 3 steel bowls wrapped carefully in towels, a printed copy of the lullabies lyrics. "She knows the song," Claire reminded him gently. "She practiced. They'll be okay." "I know," he said, but his hands shook as he zipped the last bag. The park was quiet, the late afternoon sun filtering through the trees. Victoria was already there, sitting on a bench, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The girls toddled toward her, hesitant at first. Then Lily reached up, and Victoria scooped her into her arms, burying her face in her daughter's hair. Emma and Sophia followed, and for a moment, the 4 of them were a knot of reunion. He watched from distance, Claire beside him. "This is good," Claire said softly. "This is what they need." He nodded, but the ache in his chest was almost unbearable. Victoria looked up, her eyes red. "I'll bring them back next Sunday." "Same time." "Same time," he echoed. They walked back to the car in silence. The house, when they returned, felt cavernous and wrong. The nursery was too quiet, the kitchen too still. That evening, Claire found him standing in the empty nursery, staring at the 3 cribs. "Come on," she said. "We're going out." "Out?" "Yes. Dinner. Somewhere that isn't here. We need to remember we're people, not just caregivers." They went to a small Italian place in the West Village, tucked into a corner booth with red-check tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. It felt strange to sit across from each other without the girls as a buffer. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, turning his water glass in slow circles. "How to be without them, even for a week." "You learn," Claire said, "the same way you learned everything else. One day at a time." "Is that what you did? After your daughter?" Claire was quiet for a long moment. "I tried to disappear for a while. Stopped working. Stopped seeing people. I thought if I made myself small enough, the grief wouldn't be able to find me." She smiled sadly. "It didn't work. Grief always finds you. So eventually, I decided to let it walk beside me instead of trying to outrun it. And that's when you started doing this work? That's when I realized I could take what I'd learned and use it to help other people navigate their own losses. Not to fix them, just to sit with them on the floor until they could stand again." He reached across the table and took her hand. "You did more than sit with us. You saved us." "No," Claire said gently. "You saved yourselves. I just showed you where to look." The week without the girls was long and strange. He threw himself into work, but found himself checking the clock constantly, waiting for meal times that didn't come, bath times that didn't happen. Claire maintained the routines in the empty house, washing the bowls, humming the lullaby to no one, keeping the rhythm alive. Why? He asked, finding her in the kitchen one evening. Because when they come back, everything needs to be exactly as they left it, she said. Consistency isn't just for when it's easy. It's especially for when it's hard. Sunday arrived like a sunrise after a long night. They were at the park 20 minutes early. When Victoria's car pulled up and the girls tumbled out, Emma shrieked and ran toward him, Sophia and Lily close behind. He dropped to his knees and caught all three, holding them so tightly they squeaked in protest. Victoria approached slowly, a tired smile on her face. They did well, she said. The bowls worked. The song worked. They asked for you, but they were okay. Thank you, he said, and meant it. Victoria handed Claire a folded piece of paper. I wrote down a few things I noticed. Times they seemed happiest. A new word Sophia said. I thought, maybe we should keep a shared log, so they have continuity. Claire took the paper, her expression warm. That's a wonderful idea. Over the following months, the rhythm settled into something sustainable. A shared digital calendar tracked meals, milestones, and medical appointments. Both homes kept identical bowls. Both parents hummed the same lullaby. Arguments still happened, scheduling conflicts, different parenting philosophies, but they were resolved faster, with less venom. It's not perfect, Victoria said one evening during a handoff. But it's working. It is, he agreed. For months after the custody order, Margaret called. Mr. Castellano, I know I have no right to ask, but I wondered if I might see the girls. Just once. In a public place, with you present. He was silent for a long moment. Claire, overhearing, nodded. Therapy, he asked. Twice a week, Margaret said. I'm working on control issues. Boundaries. I'm not asking for my job back. I just want to apologize. To them. To you. They met at the same park where the exchanges happened. Margaret brought a small bag of wooden toys, simple, thoughtful. She knelt on the grass and spoke to the girls gently, then looked up at him. I'm sorry, she said. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really just protecting my own sense of order. I was wrong. Thank you, he said. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. A first step. A year after the hearing, the house had transformed. Photos from both homes lined the hallway. Victoria's apartment, his mansion, the park, the beach. The girls at both dinner tables, both bathtubs, both beds. A family that didn't fit a single frame, but existed across many. The bowls remained, though now the girls asked for them by choice rather than need. Some nights they ate on the floor. Other nights they climbed into chairs and used forks, proud of their growing coordination. He still sat on the floor for meals, even when work threatened to consume him. Presence over perfection had become his mantra. One evening, after the girls were asleep, he found Claire in the kitchen, hand-washing the bowls as always. Can I ask you something? He said. She looked up, smiling. Of course. This house, this life we've built, it works. Not because it's easy, but because we keep choosing it. Every day. Yes, she said carefully. I want to keep choosing it. On purpose. Not as employer and employee. As partners. As family. Claire set down the bowl, her hands still damp. What are you asking? I'm asking if you'll stay. Not because the girls need you, though they do, but because I need you. Because we're better together than apart. She was quiet for a long moment, and he held his breath. I'll stay, she said finally. Not because you're rescuing me or I'm rescuing you, but because this, she gestured to the bowls, the photos, the life they'd built, is real, and I want to keep building it. He pulled her close, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The same rhythm she'd hummed into a lullaby, the same rhythm that had brought 3 little girls back from the edge. 2 years after the custody hearing, on a warm Tuesday evening, the kitchen was full of sound and light. Victoria sat cross-legged on the floor, laughing as Emma tried to teach her a clapping game. He was at the counter, chopping vegetables while Sophia helped by stealing carrot sticks. Claire hummed the lullaby, now so ingrained it was almost unconscious, while Lily set the table with careful, serious concentration. 3 steel bowls sat on the counter, clean and ready. But tonight, the girls had asked for the table. For chairs. For forks. We're big now, Emma announced proudly. You are, Claire agreed, lifting her into a chair. So big. They sat together, 2 parents, 1 partner, 3 girls, and the conversation flowed easily. Plans for the weekend. A funny thing that happened at preschool. Victoria's new project at work. His upcoming presentation. After dinner, Lily looked at the bowls on the counter. Can we do floor bowls tomorrow? She asked. Of course, he said. Whenever you want. Because the bowls weren't a crutch. They were a bridge. A reminder that safety could be rebuilt, that love could be carried across fractures, that presence, steady, patient, imperfect presence, was the recipe that fed children best. Claire caught his eye across the table and smiled. Outside, the city glowed. Inside, a family, fractured and mended, complicated and whole, hummed the same song. Thank you for staying with this family through every bowl, every song, every hard-won moment of healing. Now it's your turn. In the comments below, I want to know, what was your favorite part of this entire story? Was it when Claire first figured out the bowl solution? When a father sat on the floor for the first time? Victoria's return? The courtroom testimony? Margaret's confrontation? Or that final scene where they all sat together, 2 parents and 1 partner, building something new? Drop your favorite moment below. And here's the thing. If we get 100 comments on this video, we'll create a bonus epilogue showing what happens 5 years later when the girls start school. So comment, subscribe if you haven't, and let's hit that goal together. Your engagement literally shapes what we create next. What moment stuck with you? Tell us now.